Hello, hello. So, the Lord was giving me a message about fake love versus true love and what is basically like puppy dog love, okay? Puppy love, however you say it. So, He was giving me two situations, chosen one, where one is with you regarding this kingdom spouse, okay? Another one is just regarding you in general and how the world views love overall, okay? So, as we know, right, I've made comments about it in past videos. I'm a 90s kid. I wasn't born in the 40s, 50s, 60s. But I've lived long enough to understand what true love is, right? Even though I believe that I have experienced in my life, I believe I have given true love out, and I believe I've received true love. But the Lord is telling me that the way that society today in 2026 views love is really different than how, say, love was viewed 50, 60, 70 years ago. Okay? And so this is why we see older generations, people, that are now today grandparents, great grandparents, right? They're in their 50s, 60s, 70s, etc. Now, not in all cases, because the way that the modern day view of love has shifted has unfortunately uprooted a lot of families and created a lot of divorce. So people that got married back in the 60s or the 70s have been divorced in the last 10, 20 years, which is unfortunate. But I mean, I can't get into everybody's situation, but the Lord is saying it does have some attachment to the way that modern day love has shifted and changed, right? And even me being, I was born in the 80s, but being like a 90s kid, those of you that are in my age range, right, you'll know what I mean, is that back when we were kids, we had all the Disney movies and things like that, and love stories, love songs, romance novels. There was a lot of attention placed on romance and love. And I'm not talking about like meeting someone for a night, dating, going on a couple dates, we're in love. I mean like actual, like true love, where like you can't let anyone come between you two because you like genuinely love this other person. You know what I'm saying? So, and forgive me if I jump around. Like I said, I have a few things to discuss in this message, okay? So I'm going to put it out as the Lord gives it to me. So with this kingdom spouse, for those of you that have a kingdom spouse, this kingdom spouse actually genuinely truly loves you, okay? They like, it's a true love. Like the Lord just said, old school love. Hallelujah. It's an old school love, like what I was just talking about, like the 40s, 50s, 60s kind of love, like the genuine, before the world got all hyped up with like social media and superficiality and BBLs and fake this and fake that, and before the world got in the way and tried to taint and destroy true love and people's notion of love, right? This person, this spouse, is most likely in your age range, chosen one. Okay, so they're right around your age. Now, I'm not saying this message can't pertain to someone whose kingdom spouse is older or younger than them, but for what I'm getting is that if you're born in the 80s, they were born in the 80s. If you're born in the 90s, they were born in the 90s. If you're born in the 70s, they were born in the 70s. You know what I'm trying to say? And so you both share this like similar notion of true love because you grew up in that same old school time frame where as much as you remember those romance novels and those love songs, they remember it too. It's like you both were raised on that, right? But then the world, meddled in and started to shift and change the perception of love and started to make people think that love was based off of surface level, superficial things, right? Vanity, the Lord is saying. Hallelujah. Vanity of self and vanity of others. And so now you have people that like meet on dating sites. They find each other attractive. That's all they know about each other. They don't know if they have chemistry or not. They just, boy sees girl, thinks she's cute, or girl sees boy, thinks he's cute. And if they both mutually think each other's cute, it's a match. And then they start, so all connections these days, right, in the last few years are starting off with attraction versus chemistry. And there's a difference there, right? Because I'm sure it's happened to you, chosen one, where like, say for instance, you're at the mall or at a party, like, in the past, whatever it is, right? Something where there's a lot of people. And you see someone physically 5 feet away from you that's attractive. You think they're good looking, but you don't feel pushed or nudged to go and talk to them, to ask about them. Maybe y'all are in the same line at the grocery store and they make a comment to you and you just give them a one-word answer. Like they're like, oh, it's nice out today, nice weather today, hey? And you're like, yeah, it's really nice. And that's it, right? You know what I'm trying to say. Why didn't you pursue that, even though you found that person attractive, or maybe you mutually found each other attractive? You didn't push further into that, right? It's because you weren't feeling it. You weren't feeling that buzz, that chemistry, that connection. You know how they say love at first sight, right? I'm not trying to say all that, but you know what I mean, is that there's this connection off the bat. And so just because someone finds you attractive doesn't mean there's a connection between you all. And just because you find someone attractive doesn't mean there's a connection between you all. There's been times I know I've dated people in the past that maybe weren't considered as attractive by worldly standards. Like maybe they weren't technically, on my level attraction wise or my type, but I still dated them and we went on to have like a successful relationship because we had a lot in common, right? We had a connection, we had chemistry, things like that. And so, the Lord is saying beauty is beyond skin deep, right? Like beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and it goes deeper than just surface level, right? And so sometimes in the world, you'll see less attractive people, men or women, with more attractive men or women, right? Where like the guy's an 8 and he's with, a 5, or the girl's an 8 and she's with a 5. And you wonder like, what's going on there? It's because those people have compatibility. They're compatible. There's something that drew them more together. Could even be destiny, right? More together than just each other's looks or what they drive or how much money they have or how they dress or something superficial, okay? But the world has tried to tinker with that and made it be like, well, you have to date someone super attractive. And like, so now you'll have guys meeting like the bookworm nerd girl and they're attracted to that nerd girl. They like her or whatever, but they'll feel pressured by society or their friends or these like, societal norms or whatever you want to say it, to push that one off and go for the girl instead that has longer hair or a better body or more money or drives a nicer vehicle or has a better smile or something like that, bigger breasts, something superficial. When truthfully their heart is not there. Like the connection was with the nerd girl, not the cheerleader. You know what I mean? But they go for the cheerleader because that's what society has recently beaten into them to think that that's what you do. Now that person 50 years ago would have went for the nerd girl, but because they would have known better, right? But that person in modern day society, a lot of times is going to go for the cheerleader, even if that's not where their heart lies. Maybe they're more physically attracted, or maybe they are feeling more pressured to be attracted because friends or family are pushing them into it, or maybe they would look better. Like when you use the scale, like say that person is an 8 and the person they're attracted to is a 5, but the other person is an 8 or 9, then it's like, oh, well, we're more compatible because we look better together. You know what I'm saying? It's vanity. It's your own vanity. And so you're using vanity on yourself and you're looking at others through a vanity lens as well, right? So your perception is skewed, right? So with a lot of you all that have kingdom spouses, that this so far is resonating for you, because again, this message won't apply to everyone, but for those of you you'll know it's for you. A lot of you, this counterfeit that could have taken attention away from your spouse and onto them, it could have been because they were viewed, this counterfeit was viewed as more attractive in a worldly sense than perhaps you are, right? And not necessarily by this spouse, okay? This spouse may have maybe thought that this counterfeit had a better body or bigger whatever, fill in the blank, right, than you, because this message is for men and women. or thought that this person drove a nicer vehicle or had more money or had more friends or something that was surface level, okay? But it doesn't necessarily mean that this spouse was more attracted to this counterfeit than they were to you, okay? Even if the world looks at you as a 5 and this counterfeit as an 8, that doesn't mean anything when it comes to this spouse, because again, as I said a minute ago, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. And so, the Lord has given me that movie reference as I'm speaking, She's All That, and it's a movie from the late 90s. If you've seen it, you'll know what I'm talking about. But it's basically where it's Rachel Lee Cook, I believe, is the girl, and Freddie Prinze Jr. is the boy. But anyways, I'll just give you a little bit of a synopsis of the movie because it goes with the message. What I'm trying to say is that, and maybe this is relevant. Maybe the Lord wants you to watch that movie. If you haven't seen it, watch it. And if you have seen it, then rewatch it, because maybe there's something in there that'll pertain to this, like a message in there, okay? But anyway, so basically the movie starts out with where Rachel is the like nerdy kind of more plain Jane girl, and she's not the one that gets all the guys, and she's not the cheerleader and all that type of stuff, but she is like really cute, and it's not like she's ugly or anything. It's just she's unique in her own way, and because she's how she is, she's an individual, and people don't like, she doesn't get people and people don't get her because she walks her own lane. You know what I'm saying? She's in her own lane. And they make Freddie Prinze Jr. plays the popular jock guy, like the athlete popular guy who's good looking and can get pretty much any girl that he wants to get. And so typically he dates, because of social circles and social norms and expectations, he dates the cheerleader type, right? The Lord is also saying Pretty in Pink. Is that right? Pretty in Pink and 16 Candles. Those two Molly Ringwald movies, the Lord is using those as well, because those are similar to this, right? Same kind of thing where Molly Ringwald plays that same kind of quirky character, right? Anyways, and so that him and his friend make a bet that he can turn any girl into the most popular girl in school by prom or something to that effect. And so he says, but the deal is I get to pick the girl. And then he's like, fair enough. And so the friend picks Rachel Lee Cook's character as the one that Freddie Prinze Jr. is supposed to make into this like bombshell popular girl or whatever. I can't remember the exact scenario, but you know what I'm saying. You can always look it up on Wikipedia too, of course, right? And so Freddie Prinze Jr. is like, okay, I can do it. And so she doesn't know that it's a bet as to why he's going about pursuing her, right? Like he has an ulterior motive as to why he's pursuing her. But he pursues her nonetheless, and she doesn't conform to him. She is herself throughout the whole movie, and he adapts to her, right? And so instead of her becoming more like him, he almost becomes more like her. And he doesn't turn her from deep to shallow or turn her superficial. Instead, she turns him from superficial to deep and from shallow to deep, right? To where he starts to see that you shouldn't judge people by their covers, and like maybe he was being too vain in the past. And so then when he gets to know her, and it all started out as a bet, yes, but then as throughout trying to make this bet happen, he gets to know her, and once he gets to know her, he becomes more and more attracted to her, and not just physically, but like connection. He starts to see that they have a connection together, and that she offers a lot more facets than these cheerleader types do. And so when these cheerleader types try to get his attention, he may find them attractive, but it doesn't change the fact that he is like genuinely, authentically attracted to the nerdy girl, right? Even though she doesn't seem like his type or the type that would be his partner, that's what he wants, because beauty's in the eye of the beholder. The Lord is also saying Shallow Hal is another movie, hallelujah. And any of these movies you might know, right? Same thing. Jack Black plays Hal, where he sees hypnosis is done on him, and then he sees what society calls ugly women as beautiful, and sees beautiful women as ugly. And all that's happened is he's seeing their soul. Because even though a so-called ugly person, it looks ugly on the outside to some, not all, but to some, they actually are more beautiful than they're viewed as because of their heart and their soul, right? So all these movies share similar themes, okay? You get the picture. So my point is that this spouse may view this counterfeit or other counterfeits as physically surface level attractive. I mean, even, anyone with eyes can see what's attractive, right? But just because this spouse may have in the past or currently been or is attracted to this counterfeit doesn't mean that this spouse is not attracted to you. And in reality, the attraction that the spouse has to you goes a lot deeper and is more genuine than the attraction that this spouse has for this counterfeit. The attraction that this spouse because for some of you, this spouse is no longer attracted to this counterfeit. They're actually not really attracted to any counterfeits. I mean, they still have eyeballs, so they can't deny when, a 9 out of 10 model walks in the room, they can't deny that person, they're not going to call that person ugly, right? They're still a male or a female. And again, I know I'm speaking from a female perspective because, well, I'm a female, but this message, just put it how it fits, right? The message is the same no matter what side it's for, okay? So this spouse can tell who's attractive, right? They haven't lost their eyesight, but they are accepting, hallelujah, accepting that the connection with you is a deeper, more genuine, authentic one. And that while maybe they could maybe technically find someone with bigger ABCs, right? Or, yeah. Sorry, ABCDs, right? Fill in the blank. Anyways, moving on. They are still attracted to you, okay? They always have been and they always will be. And no matter how many counterfeits try to come up in their face or that they may chase after or use their eyeballs to view, it's not changing the fact that they still find you attractive. Even if no one else does, that's fine. They still do, right? And going back to that movie about the nerdy girl, they may by the way, in the end, they end up together, right? Not to give the whole movie away, but they do, right? Because true love wins every time. Even though he got flack from people around him and stuff like that, right? He couldn't, and so this is the thing, is that for a while, this spouse could have denied their feelings for you, chosen one. They could have tried to talk themselves. What I'm getting is you're an attractive person, okay? You might not be a bombshell, but you're attractive. And this spouse is currently, right now, and always has been, always in the past since you all met, because in a lot of y'all's cases, this was love at first sight, and will continue in the future to be attracted to you. And again, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. So even if you look at yourself as a 5 and everyone else sees you as a 6, this spouse sees you as a 9, okay? And people can try, and they have tried, to brainwash this person, this spouse, into thinking that you're not attractive. They've tried to say, oh, look at their body, their butt's too flat, they're too fat, they're too chunky, their teeth aren't that great, they do this bad habit or they do that, and they tried to do all this stuff on purpose to try to brainwash this person into finding something else more attractive than you, and or to stop being attracted to you, including this counterfeit. This counterfeit may have spent a lot of time in the past trying to put you down and trying to manipulate and brainwash this spouse into A, thinking you're unattractive, and B, finding them as the most attractive and trying to change their perception of attraction. Say for example, this spouse likes curvy partners, and this counterfeit's in good shape. They would try and change the spouse into thinking that people who are bigger or curvy are gross, and those in good shape are the best, and vice versa. Say if this spouse likes someone in shape, toned and in shape, and this counterfeit is more curvy, this counterfeit would try and change the spouse's perception of, hey, don't be attracted to people in shape, be attracted to curvy people instead. It's like they try this counterfeit tried to have the best of whatever you lacked. So if you had just say for instance, again, I'm just giving the message, okay? say if you were a little on the chubbier side, this counterfeit tried to like be poo poo being chubby and tried to like stay in shape or something, or tried to change the spouse's perception into thinking that people who are a little on the heavier side are gross and disgusting, right? Whatever you were, say you had long hair, this in the past this counterfeit tried to copy you, okay? But then when the copying wasn't working and it was starting to come off as weird, then what this counterfeit tried to do instead was change gears and be the opposite of you, okay? So if you had long hair, they tried to have long hair, but then when it was found that they were trying to copy, they may have went and cut their hair. Or if you have dark hair and they were a blonde, they tried to make themselves dark haired like you, and then when it looked too much like copying, then they went back to blonde or red, and they tried to do something. They tried to in the past copy you, but they also tried to be the opposite of you. And it was all in efforts to try to manipulate and brainwash this spouse's perception and connection and attraction away from you onto something different, if that's making sense, okay? But that didn't work because this spouse has always, like, if they were hooked up to a lie detector test, right? And they were asked, do you find this person attractive? And they said no, it would come up as a lie every single time. So when this spouse tried to like put you down or act like they weren't attracted to you, either to you or to others, it was a lie. Nothing that this counterfeit did to try to sabotage the spouse's perception of you spiritually and physically or y'all's connection, it didn't work. Even if they thought it did, it was temporary, or the spouse was lying, right? They were like covering up the genuine truth of it, right? And so that even happened in that movie with She's All That, is that there was a little period there where he tried to deny his attraction to her. He tried to like go for other things and like not give into it and just stick with the program. Like, no, this is a bet. I don't have feelings. It's just a bet. It's just a bet. He tried to deny his attraction and their connection and his feelings. Okay. So for a time, could have been a long time between you all, this spouse tried to deny their attraction and feelings towards you. Okay. And so if this spouse ever told this counterfeit or counterfeits, friends, family, whatever it may be, that they thought you were ugly or they weren't attracted to you or they used to be, but they're not anymore, they were lying. And in a lot of cases, they were even lying to themselves. Because there might have been a time in the past when this spouse was on board with the program. So whether it was done intentionally or unintentionally, this counterfeit was trying to intentionally brainwash this spouse, but this spouse may have unintentionally been trying to brainwash themselves and trick their own brain, right? Like, no, I'm not attracted, like telling themselves this so that they could, because the Lord is showing me that there was two things at play in y'all's dynamic, is that this counterfeit and other counterfeits were trying to taint this spouse's image of you and feelings and perception of you, okay? And trying to sidetrack their attraction and what they're attracted to. And ultimately, in the end, it didn't work. It never worked. But for a time, the spouse may have lied and pretended it worked just to appease these people, right? To get them to go away. Or there might have been even a time that the spouse was in denial themselves, trying to like trick themselves just like they were into like, no, I don't have feelings. I'm not attracted. I don't have feelings. I'm not attracted. It's just this. It's just that. You know what I mean? But whether it was the spouse trying to do it or these counterfeits trying to do it or whatever it was, it never worked. This spouse has always, from day one they met you, been attracted to you genuinely. Not just about your eyes or your body parts or, you know, this, that, and the third. Like genuine connection. Like, you know, it's been like a love at first sight with you since they met you. And yeah, throughout the years, you could have gained some weight. Your hair could have turned gray. You could have, you know, gotten some wrinkles. You could have, you know, like maybe your best features have maybe taken a bit of a slide. I mean, that's what happens. We all look different at 50 than we did at 20. You know what I'm saying? That's life. But even still, it doesn't matter, chosen one, whether you've been skinny or big, this spouse has always been attracted to you. whether you've looked like your best or your worst, whether you were had a little to offer, a lot to offer, whether you're going through a good patch or a bad patch, this spouse has always been attracted to you. In the past, they may have tried to make you feel like they weren't, or make others feel like they weren't, or even make themselves feel like they weren't, but they always were, because this is the difference between surface fake love, right? Puppy love, and true love. And so now I go back to what I was saying in the beginning, is that when you see these older generations, you see people that are grandparents that have been together for 40, 50, 60 years. And those each other, right? When they met in their 20s, they were both, bombshells, right? They both were looking in their prime. They both were in great shape, no wrinkles, great hair, great everything. But of course, now that they're 80 and they've been together 60 years, they see how each other has aged throughout the years. And if you look at a photograph of that 80-year-old woman or that 80-year-old man back in their 20s, 60 years earlier, you see that today they look totally different, right? But yet they stay together and they're still attracted to one another. And even if their relationship now in their 80s isn't so much based on attraction, it's not attraction that kept them together those 60 years, right? It was a genuine, true love connection. People would say, well, it's because they took marriage vows. Well, no, it's not. It's not just because they took marriage vows. And if those situations were all the same, but you took away the marriage vows, a lot of them would have still stayed together anyways. It's because what happened was it was love at first sight. They were attracted to each other mutually, yes, but there was other men that would have found her attractive and other women that would have found him attractive. Maybe one of them was that jock football type player. Maybe, right? Maybe one of them was the cheerleader. But they were attracted to each other on a deeper level, and they looked for deeper level things back at 50, 60 years ago in the 60s and 70s that they don't look for today. Today, men will leave a good woman for a woman with a BBL. Let's be real. You know what I mean? Today, women will leave a good man for a man who has an 8-pack, okay? And then what ends up happening, just like you see in the movies, is that they regret what they did because, it's vanity, right? And the Bible talks about vanity and how you have to watch for that. And so it was this spouse's vanity that made them look at you a certain way or look at someone else a certain way. But it was other people's perspective of vanity that also made them make this spouse try to look at you a different way, right? There was never anything wrong with you. And when you compare apples to oranges and you compare what you bring to the table in all your facets, chosen one, versus what these other ones bring to the table, you win bar none. Like you're hands down the champ, right? And this spouse can't deny that. And so they wasted time trying to erase their attraction for you. It was a waste of time because it never happened. They wasted time cashing in you a whole dollar to turn around and get a dime back, right? I always use that example. They lost 90 cents. They devalued themselves and they made this choice based off of superficiality, based off of vanity. So therefore it wasn't concrete. And so today you have people that are getting with abusers, narcissists, cheaters, liars, thieves, criminals, all kinds of terrible, horrible things that they don't find out later on down the road because the only reason why they got with them in the first place was because they had a nice vehicle or a nice body or nice teeth. You know what I'm saying? And so then they find all this stuff out later on and it's their own fault. Yes, it's that person's fault for tricking them, for duping them, but it's also their fault because they should have been smarter, right? They should have made better choices. But because they continually see life through this vanity lens, themselves and others, they're like Shallow Hal where their perception is off, except it's the other way. Like if you watch Shallow Hal, it starts out where he's like a womanizer and he is choosing women based off of their looks. And so there's women that are universally attractive that like 9 out of 10 people would consider attractive. Those are the ones he's going for, but they're rejecting him and mistreating him and turning him down and shutting him down and all this stuff, right? And that mentality keeps him, even though he's older in the movie, it keeps him in this like playboy mentality, right? And the thing is, he wasn't really anything to write home about himself. Like, he's like a 6 in the movie trying to get with 10s, right? And it's not that that can't happen, but he himself doesn't have anything attractive to offer. So he's being viewed by others with the same vanity microscope that he's putting others under. And so therefore, all he's either striking out or just getting kind of like superficial relationships or one night stands, like things like that. Nothing with any, right? But he sticks with it because his perception of the opposite sex is skewed. And so then I think it's Tony Robbins puts him under like a hypnosis spell or something to that effect. And it turns out where all of a sudden he starts to see women for who they really are. He sees the attractive ones as ugly and the ugly ones as attractive, because now he's viewing them by inner beauty versus outer beauty, right? And so because he's under this spell and nobody else is, his friend that he used to go out with to get women, they'd go out and he's going and hitting on the so-called ugly girls. And then his friend's like, Hal, why are you talking to these ugly girls? And he's like, what? What are you talking about? Are you kidding me? These girls are gorgeous. And his friend's like, no, they're not. And it's showing Hal's perception under this spell versus, so this counterfeit and others, somebody could have tried to put this spouse under a spell to make them see you as ugly and them as attractive, when in reality, you're attractive and they're ugly. And again, we're not talking about surface level shallowness, right? Again, this counterfeit could have been by worldly standards considered more attractive than you, but in true standards, they're not, okay? And so just like Hal was seeing, it was backwards, right? How Hal was seeing ugly women as attractive. The spouse could have seen you who's attracted to them as ugly and saw someone else who is actually ugly as attractive. And yeah, I don't know, something along those lines. There's something there with that, okay? Anyways, playing with someone's perception, right? And so Hal goes on, again, not trying to give away the movie, but it goes with the message. Hal goes on to find this one girl who's a big girl and others don't find her attractive. She's used to not looking attractive in her eyes and to others. But Hal, because he's under this spell, finds her to be gorgeous. And so they end up getting to know each other while Hal's under the spell. But then the spell ends up getting broken. And then Hal sees things back the old way, like the way he used to see it, right? And then he sees her and he sees who she really is, like he's not under the spell anymore. And so now he's like kind of taken aback, but he still gets with her anyways, and they end up being together in the end because he, just like in the She's All That movie, he used the fact that he was genuinely, truly connected to her as the deciding factor versus just what she looks like on the surface to the rest of the world, right? It's because beauty's in the eye of the beholder, and he found her to be beautiful. And if he would have met her in the beginning, he wouldn't have looked at her twice because he had that shallow way of thinking, right? But once he got to know her, courtesy of being under this spell, right? And just like with Freddie Prinze Jr. and She's All That, the only reason he got to know her was because it was through a bet. So it took like a unintentional method to continue to have these men pursue these women, which wouldn't be considered their type. But once they got to know them, they didn't want to be anywhere else, right? And so it's kind of the opposite, is that these counterfeits in the spouse's life could have been trying to, make this spouse run away from you instead of towards you, right? Stop the spouse from getting to know you, because as long as the spouse existed, they found you attractive and had a connection with you. And as long as they pursued the connection with you, they became more and more infatuated and connected and attracted to you, because that was the course of life, right? That's what was supposed to happen. Instead, they interfered, like how Hal's friend tried to do, and tried to say, hey, snap out of it, get back on track, this is not the one for you, da 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 da. And so instead of putting the spouse under a spell to see things in a good way, they tried to put the spouse under a spell to see good things in a bad way. You know what I mean? Like the opposite, okay? And so now what's happened is that this spouse has came to terms with their perception of you, chosen one. They've always been attracted to you, and they might have tried to push it off or deny it or pretend it's not there or something, but it's always been there lingering no matter what. And so now they've started to just accept it. Instead of running away from it, they've ran towards it, and they've just like in the movie they're described with Freddie Prinze Jr. and Shallow Hal, they're just accepting that this is where their heart is, okay? And whether people find you attractive or not is irrelevant. They do. And it's not all about if you're nerdy or if you're bigger or you're shorter or you're taller or you're this or you're that, whatever beauty's, society's beauty standards are. You have something about you. It's that soul, it's that heart that is more attractive to them than anything else. And they may have taken a hiatus for a while to go and entertain the superficial, right? For some of them, it's because they talked themselves into it, talked themselves out of you and talked themselves into someone else. For others of them, it's that someone else talked them out of you and talked them into someone else, okay? And for others, it's a combination of the two. For others of you, it was denial that, because maybe you're not typically their type, or maybe there are things about you that are kind of like, off-putting to society or something, but they cannot deny the fact that it was love at first sight with you, and that as they've always been attracted to you, whether people agree with it or not, they've always had a connection with you, and they left it behind for whatever reason to go pursue what society considers a better option. But after entertaining these better options, they discovered and saw that these options are not better. And that all of this time wasting and running around hasn't done anything to take away or shake away their feelings and perception of you. They're still attracted to you, even if you've gained weight, even if you've aged, even if you don't drive the same vehicle anymore that you did before, that you're in these positions that society considers as lackluster. They still find you to be that way, and they always have. So this spouse and these counterfeits were unsuccessful at altering the spouse's perception of you in the past, currently as I speak, and in the future. And this counterfeit and counterfeits are starting to see that, is that whatever they've done, whether it's through word salad, mental manipulation, spell work, brainwashing, fill in the blank, it hasn't worked. Even if it appeared as if it did work in the past, it's wore off now. Even in that Shallow Hal movie, he wasn't under the hypnosis forever. A time came when he snapped back to reality. And so now this spouse either already has snapped back to reality, or they will be in the future. And once this either has occurred or once it does, this spouse is going to see you in all your glory, like as they're supposed to, as they always have. This whole notion of this spouse and others altering their perception of you either hasn't worked or it's going to wear off eventually. You know what I'm saying? And so it's been for nothing. Everything the spouse has done has been for nothing. What these counterfeits have done has been for nothing. Okay? So that's the part about you, and then a part about the world's standards and things like that, right? And so we see in the world today that, now I'm going to go back to the whole love thing, okay? This spouse was in like surface level puppy love with this counterfeit, okay? They could have maybe shown attraction or feelings or care for this counterfeit. They could have maybe told this counterfeit they loved them. They could have maybe been in, worldly situations with them, living together, child together, engaged, whatever, or all of the above. And I'm not saying that the spouse didn't actually at some point have genuine attraction or feelings for this counterfeit, but the spouses, there's a difference, as I started this message out with saying, between fake love versus true love, or puppy love versus true love, right? The connection that this spouse either had or has with this counterfeit is not the type of connection or relationship that has staying power. There's no way that what they either had in the past or have currently or could have in the future has the ability to go the distance. Whether they got married or not, it doesn't have the ability to go the long run and last 40, 50, 60 years, right? It doesn't. It's going to run out of gas somewhere along the way. And so this is the difference between people that meet when they're 18, get married at 20, and divorce at 30, versus people that meet when they're 18, get married at 20, and, live till they're 80 and widow each other, right? You know what I'm trying to say? There's the difference there because one scenario had true love and the other scenario had fake love, puppy love, right? And fake love, puppy love mimics true love, okay? It's both true love and fake love start out with attraction. Both fake love and true love start out with a connection and chemistry. Both fake love and true love can go through the roles, right? Can get married, can live together, can have kids, all of it. But one has staying power and one doesn't. One is meant to last and meant to be, and one is not, right? We've all been in superficial connections, right? Where either someone was attracted to us and we went for it, or we were attracted to them and we went for it, okay? And so that's how society views love today in 2026, is they view it skewed, they view it through vanity, and they hold themselves to the beholder, right? The beholder holds themselves to this skewed viewpoint, and then thereby holds others to that same skewed viewpoint as well. So it's like a filter. They're filtering out what they're seeing and how to explain it? They're filtering people through their own vanity, shallow lens, and therefore they are weeding out the good ones and taking in the bad ones, because the bad ones may look good, but they're just as shallow and vain as they are. And so you have two shallow people getting together. You have two vain people getting together, right? And now it comes off like they have a lot in common, but they really don't, because what they have in common is shallowness, vanity, misperception, superficiality. That's what they have in common. And so then the flaws of the one partner start to wear on the nerves of the other partner, and they don't like what each other has, because what each other has is gross, right? It's just like when Hal was in a relationship in the movie with a bombshell. It's not really a relationship, but it was something along those lines. It didn't work out. It didn't last because that person he chose was shallow. And so they were attracted to the shallowness in Hal. And therefore, because they were shallow, Hal was attracted to the shallowness in them. And so you had two people that didn't look right and weren't meant to be on all areas, but were yet together. And of course the relationship fizzled out because it was only based off of attraction and shallowness. That's what it was based off of, right? And that's what a lot of worldly relationships are based off of. But when he met I think her name was Mary Jane, or Mary something, I could be wrong. Anyways, the one that was viewed as not as attractive, right? When he met her, their relationship was genuine. He saw her for who she really was, and she saw him for who he really was. And in the course of his relationship with her, he stopped being so shallow. And so he started to reveal a depth to his character, to her and only her, and he could recognize because of that the depth of her character. And so now it's different because she's attracted to him, but also the depth of his character. And he's attracted to not only her, but the depth of her character. And so that relationship has a lasting power behind it that the other ones don't have, because it's based off of something deeper, right? And so this can be very similar to you and your spouse chosen one, is that, you may find your spouse attractive, even if others don't, oh, well, you do. And your spouse may find you attractive, even if others don't, oh, well, you do. And you could have tried to deny that, and they could have tried, or they tried to deny it, but you love this person, and it's the depth of them that you see. Okay. Now we're going to get into the second part. Hallelujah. About the love part. Okay. So with true love, the Bible talks about this in 1 Corinthians. I'm going to admit I don't, have it memorized off the top of my head, but you can always look up the scripture yourself, and I encourage you to do so, right? But it talks about how love is patient, love is kind, it never boasts, and it's not easily angered, right? There's more to it, but those are the lines that always stick out to me and that the Lord always highlights to me, okay? And so this spouse has that type of a love for you, okay, whether you realize it or not. And it may not have been made plain to you because they were too busy trying to run away from it or have interference trying to skew it, okay? But with the connection between you and the spouse, true love, okay, not just love, but true love is patient. True love is kind. True love doesn't boast. It doesn't envy, okay? And it's not easily angered. And so this is why the Bible talks about this, is because the Lord wants us to measure our relationships by these standards. So if you're with somebody, pursuing someone, or married to someone, or living with someone, or dating someone, and you're not kind to them, or they're not kind to you, that's a red flag. If you're boastful to them, or they're boastful to you, that's a red flag. If they're not patient with you and you're not patient with them, that's a red flag, right? You both should be mutually patient, mutually kind, mutually not easily angered. You know what I'm trying to say? Now, of course, nobody's perfect. We all, no matter what, even Apostle Paul that wrote Corinthians wasn't perfect, right? We're all going to be angered sometimes, or impatient sometimes, or unkind at times. That's just human nature. But I'm talking about overall, you know what I'm saying? Like, if consistently overall all the time your person is not kind to you, well, that's a problem, right? And so they think you're attractive, they want to jump in the bed with you, but they're not kind to you, or they're impatient with you. Well, you know what I mean? That's not love. That's puppy love, that's fake love, that's superficial love. What brought you all together was the surface stuff, okay? Because if there's genuine love, like picture those 80-year-olds again. Do you think they're patient with each other? Yes. If you ever see an elderly couple, you see that they walk slow, they help each other, right? They don't rush each other along, they don't get in a huff, they're patient, right? They're kind to each other, they're considerate, things like that. They're not boasting to each other. And it's because of having that mentality, and I'm sure they've had hiccups along the way, but she thinks like that, and he thinks like that, and she feels that way for him, and he feels that way for her, and that's how they've managed to be successfully married for 60 years. It's because of that. Because let's be honest, when you're 20, it's attraction. When you're 60, it's not attraction anymore. You know what I mean? Like that 20-year-old man could have went out and got 20 girls. That 20-year-old woman could have went out and got 20 guys. But now if that 80-year-old woman goes out, she's not pulling 20 guys. And if that 80-year-old man's going out, he's not pulling 20 girls. You know what I'm saying? And so like attraction started the fire, and attraction's still there, but it's an attraction for each other, but it goes deeper than that. There's other things that have been and are keeping those 80-year-olds still together besides just attraction. You see what I'm saying? And so this is the thing, is that with this spouse and these counterfeits, you know, one or multiple, there's not a reciprocal kindness. There's not a reciprocal patience, right? It's just surface level. People being friends with this spouse because of surface level things, how much money they make, how many friends they have, how good they are at this, that, and the third, how attractive they are. Maybe they're a good wingman when they go out. Oh, you're attractive, you can pull people, you know. And I mean, that's a thing, right? Like years and years and years ago when I was younger, I would go out, and I had friends that wanted to go out with me because they were better able to bring, you know, the guys around if they went out with me, type of a thing. You know what I'm saying? And again, I'm not trying to toot my horn. I'm just being honest. Like, that's happened to me before. And so that can happen, as that, you know, maybe these counterfeits want the spouse because of how much money they make, or, you know, their ability in certain things and stuff like that, or that all the girls think they're cute, so therefore they want that clout. Like, it's something surface level like that, right? And you're not into all of that. Whether this spouse was tall or short, big or skinny, rich or poor, you would still be attracted to this spouse, right? And this is how this spouse feels about you, even if it's not made obvious, okay, in the past. But as time's moving forward, the spouse is coming to more and more terms with this and accepting this more and more, right? They're accepting that the way that they've perceived the opposite sex has perhaps been skewed, and that maybe their perception of themselves and others is very superficial, and therefore what they've attracted has been superficial. And you know what I'm trying to say, right? It hasn't had the substance to it. And with you, you're someone that they always found attractive in that same category, but yet there's different things about you that are more genuine than what they had with others. And that's because what they had and have with you was meant to go the distance. It was something that was deeper than just, the surface level, shallow things. Okay. And so with this spouse chosen one, I'm going to just cut it right now and say that what the Lord was telling me is that I know some of you, okay, how do I put it, Lord? I know a lot of you are probably in separation from your spouse right now, whether that's because you want it or your spouse wants it or you both want it or the Lord wants it, whatever it may be, right? But you know there's been interference and they know there's been interference, right? It was a necessary evil. Hallelujah. It was a necessary evil because it basically taught this spouse a lesson, many lessons. The spouse is not done learning lessons, but it taught them a fundamental lesson of needing, just like in that Shallow Hal movie, of needing to see that there was nothing wrong with you, that it was something wrong with them. The way that they were filtering themselves and filtering others, including you, was a skewed lens. It was distorted, okay? And that it took, if these counterfeits hadn't came along and if they hadn't interfered and this necessary evil didn't come about, this spouse would have gotten with you and off everything rides into the sunset, and the spouse would have continued to have a wandering eye and view you through this shallow superficial lens, view themselves and others through this shallow superficial lens. This was something that needed to be corrected and adjusted. Hallelujah. And that is something that either has already happened or will be happening in the future, like is playing out now or has occurred, okay? And it was necessary so that when you and the spouse do reunite and go into union, that you can last 10, 20, 30, 40 years and have the staying power. You know what I'm saying? Not fizzle out in 2, 3, 4, 5 years like everyone else you were with and everyone else they were with. And this is something you needed to learn too, chosen one. You learned this lesson as well throughout this journey. Not just them, you both did, but this was something that really affected y'all's connection where they were concerned. Okay, it was kind of like worse. It was worse with them than it was with you. Okay, and it's this distorted perception that allowed them to embrace and entertain and run towards these counterfeits in the first place. Had they had their vision corrected years ago, this never would have even happened, right? And so that's one thing. The second thing is, because that connection is deeper than skin deep, surface level, and 1 Corinthians talks about how, true love, do you think that those 80-year-olds that have been married 60 years, I'm sure that one of them in the past told a lie. Maybe even one of them made a mess up and did a cheat. You know what I mean? Who knows whether the other partner knows it or not. I'm sure there were lean times, hard times, and struggles. There's no way you're going to live 60 years and be beside somebody else throughout those 60 years and not go through big hiccups and shakeups, right? But yet they still stayed together because not only was their connection meant to be and meant to stay, but also they viewed each other through that true love lens. So they gave each other grace. Hallelujah. They gave each other grace. And like I said, this is how you measure if you really love someone or if they really love you, is by these things. And so there's been times throughout this Kingdom Spouse journey, chose one, that you have not been, what's the word? The Lord is saying a cupcake, but that's not what I'm trying to say. I can't think of the word right now, but if it comes back to me, I'll say it. But there's been that you haven't been a real gem, right? There's been times that you haven't been, I forget the exact word I was going for, but you know what I'm saying, where you haven't been, just a second. Sorry, I paused for a second to think. It's not coming to me. But anyways, you haven't been a real peach yourself, right? A real picnic. Hallelujah. You haven't, I think that's what I was trying to say. You haven't been a real picnic yourself or a real peach yourself, right? And that's been your past, that's your present, that'll be in the future, because you have flaws. You're always going to have flaws. You're a flawed individual like everybody else, right? Even though you're chosen anointed, you're still flawed. And this spouse, same thing. They're chosen anointed, but they're flawed as well. And it's not a contest of whether you served up more flack or they served up more flack, but you haven't been a perfect peach yourself, and neither have they. But you still, at the end of the day, you got to be real with yourself. Again, this message may not be for everybody, but for those of you it is for. You still love this person despite what they have done, and they do with you as well. And no matter how much dirt you've done or dirt they've done, or no matter how many hiccups y'all's relationship or connection has went through, you still stay patient and kind as a person and in regards to them. Even if you're upset and mad and bothered underneath the scenes, you're patient and kind to them, and they to you as well, okay? Despite the interference, despite the setbacks and all this other stuff, and the fact that they were trying to deny you and push away y'all's connection. And, the Lord just told me now, this spouse has been a Peter and a Judas to you in y'all's relationship, chosen one. And for a lot of you already know that. They've denied you like Peter denied Jesus, and they betrayed you for money like Judas did to Jesus, okay? They denied you and they sold you out, and they denied you more than once, okay? So, but Jesus still forgave Peter and Judas, and Jesus still took it with a grain of salt of not dismissing what they did because it was wrong. That's why Jesus acknowledged it in the Bible. He acknowledged it. He didn't just keep his mouth shut. He acknowledged it. He told Peter, he said, you're going to deny me 3 times. And he told Judas, come and do what you need to do, because he knew he was going to betray him, that he either was going to or that he had. But either way, he was privy to all this in advance, right? But he still didn't go running around trying to put down Judas and Peter and, doing all these crazy things. He just accepted it. And so that's the same thing, chosen one, is that a lot of you, some of you didn't know that, others of you did. This spouse has been a Peter in your life. They've denied you more than once, and you're aware of it. Whether they've told you or not, they have. And this message may be revelation for some of you or confirmation for others. And or also, not just that, they were a Judas to you too, where they had betrayed you. And in a lot of y'all's cases, they did it for some money. Or if it wasn't money, it was something very small and superficial like money, okay? And you're aware of it, but still, at the end of the day, you still take it with a grain of salt and forgive this person, because that's just how you are. You have a Jesus anointing, right? What would Jesus do? But on the other hand, it's also because you have a true, genuine connection with this person. It's just like Judas and Peter were Jesus's disciples. They were the 12 chosen, right? And so Jesus chose them for a reason in the beginning. It's because he had a connection with them. And so, why didn't he choose Bob and Tom? He chose Judas and Peter, even though he knew in advance, because it was Jesus, that they were going to do him dirty down the road. He still chose them anyways. And it's because of the connection that they had, because the type of connection doesn't always come around. You could meet 100 people, chosen one, and not have the connection with them that you have with your spouse. And vice versa. Your spouse can meet 100 people too and not have the connection with them that they have with you. This is why Jesus met many, many people, but only chose those 12. And he even knew that 2 of those 12 were going to do him wrong, and they did, right? And so chosen one, that this spouse has done you dirty in the past, and you forgive them, and you're not foolish, but at the same time, if the Lord nudges you to exercise your 1 Corinthians, your patience and your kindness, you will, right? And them as well with you. And so truly, no matter what you do to this spouse or who interferes, they can't leave you behind 100%. And vice versa with you, because not only are you a chosen one, so is this spouse, but you all were chosen for each other, okay? And so even though Judas and Peter respected Jesus and Jesus respected them, and Jesus chose them and they chose Jesus, they chose each other, right? Because let's be honest, the disciples didn't have to be disciples. So they chose each other. It didn't stop Peter and Judas from doing Jesus dirty, right? Jesus knew it, but he just chose to overcome it. And so that's the same thing with you, chosen one, is that no matter what has happened in the past, is happening currently, or could happen in the future, you and this spouse have taught each other lessons that needed to be learned. in order for you all to reunite and reconcile in the future, okay? And one of the biggest obstacles on the spouse's side was this skewed and distorted way of thinking, okay? But they grew up in like the 80s, 90s, whatever generation you were from, right? The same as you. And so you both have this preconceived earlier notion of love that society has tried to change in the recent, last 10, 20 years, right? Since we've hit social media, digital age, things like that. And so when it comes to growing up around that romance and the true love connection, you know what it really is, and the spouse knows what it really is, and they know they have that with you. You know you have it with them, even if you all are separated, even if you all, like, you're with someone else or they're with someone else or whatever it may be. Even if there's interference, nothing has changed this seed, so to speak, this root, okay? And actually, despite their best efforts, this spouse's perception either has changed, is changing, or will change. So they didn't actually stop God's plan in the long run of changing this spouse's perception. However, just like in the Shallow Hal movie, the Lord, it was a necessary interference and evil to have this counterfeit come about and get involved, because if this counterfeit hadn't came along and been superficially attractive, shallowly, if that's even a word, attractive to this spouse, the spouse wouldn't have went for it. And if the spouse wouldn't have went for it, they wouldn't have learned the lessons of what they offer versus what you offer, and therefore wouldn't have been able to see things accurately. It's because of what you served and what this counterfeit served that the spouse was able to differentiate the two dishes, right? Yours versus theirs. And this was the Lord's doing. This is the thing, is despite what this counterfeit did or you did, the Lord is the one that brought this into orchestration. He's the one that had this happen. He's the one that had this go, because he knew that even if you didn't get it at the time, that this was something that you both needed to learn, especially this spouse, and that it was going to benefit you and y'all's relationship and the spouse in the long run. Okay. And so at this time, chosen one, the spouse may have came to terms with the fact of everything I'm saying in this message, okay? They finally stopped trying to run from this or deny or fall victim to this hypnosis or brainwashing or temptations or tactics or whatever it is. If this is not happening right now in present time or in the past, this is going to be coming about in the future, okay? And it's going to show this spouse that you're where the true love lies. But the thing is, they've always known that. They just tried to cover that up or deny it or run from it. But it's getting to where they're starting to just embrace and accept that it is what it is, okay? And you and the spouse share true love with each other, not fake love, puppy love, like you've experienced in the past and the spouse has maybe experienced as well in the past. And they're starting to see the difference. That's another thing too that was learned, and a key lesson as well was like learning the difference between fake love, puppy love, and real love. Because there's been times with you too, chosen one, where when you're in the world, you dated people based off of attraction. And going back to what I was saying earlier in the message, is that it's pretty foolish and unwise that the world operates that way. Because like I said, if you're at the grocery store and someone else is, you both think each other are cute, but you're not feeling compelled to like talk to them or them with you, it's because there's no connection there. But yet on dating sites, that's exactly how people are meeting, is that they're not actually meeting in person to see if, the pheromones and the chemistry, they don't know all that about you and you don't know that about them. You're literally rating each other based off of a photo. And so this person could literally be a catfish. They could be a KILLER, they could be an abuser and you have no clue. They could be a full-blown demon. They don't know that about you and you don't know that about them, because you're literally evaluating each other off of a photo. And what if that's a photo that they took 5 years ago? That's another thing that happens a lot that we hear about, right? Is like that was the person 10 years ago, not today. And that's something else in and of itself, is that why does that matter so much? Like, so someone will use an older photo, which I'm not saying that is right. It's not right, okay? But then that falls into what I'm saying, is that then the person meets them and it is that person, but they're just older in real life than they were in the photo. And then they're like, you tricked me and I don't like you and you're a jerk, you're a catfish. How dare you show a photo of you 5 years ago? And, it's like, really? It just shows how superficial that person is, because that's that person, right? Like, I understand we age. Like, I don't look the same today as I did 10 years ago, but it's still me. And so if you saw a photo of me 10 years ago and thought I was cute, I'm sure I'm still cute in some ways today. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like, it's not like I've changed shapes. It's not like I've morphed into something else. That's still me. It's just the hair might be a little grayer and, the skin might be a little saggier, but it's still me. And so that falls into it too, is that people immediately get so bothered and upset that someone duped them. And it's not that they fully duped them. They just, put up a picture that was an older one of them, right? And they take that so seriously too. And it's like, give somebody some grace, right? Give them some grace, because you're not a peach home, you're not anything to write home about yourself. You're not perfect. So why aren't you extending that same, and that's like the Shallow Hal movie, is that's what's so funny about it, is that if they had picked a real bombshell guy to do it, it would have been funny, but not as funny. But what was so ironic was that they picked Jack Black. And in the movie, he's not the most attractive, right, by worldly standards. And so you have somebody on a scale that people would rate a 6, judging people for not being attractive enough. And it's like, that was the whole point of the movie. It's like, who are you to talk? And so that's the other thing too, is in today's world, you'll have older people that are like 6 out of 10s, and they're judging other people, and they're meeting like people on their level and saying, oh no, they're not good enough. They're not good enough. But what about you? Like, have you, do you measure yourself by the same standards that you measure other people? And that's something else that could have been happening with this spouse, is that this spouse is perhaps attractive, and you're perhaps attractive as well. But this spouse started to be like, well, I make more money than you, or I drive a better vehicle than you, or I have more friends than you, or I'm in better shape than you, or like something like this. And so then they started to see you as less than them and themselves as better than you. And it's like the things that they were measuring you by weren't even, it was unfair. Like, they're not perfect themselves. And you could have technically turned around and said, well, that's all true, but you lie and I don't. You cheat and I don't. You're a backstabber. I wouldn't do that. You know what I mean? It's the same thing. Like, Jesus could have said all that to Judas too. It's like, well, I may not be perfect, Judas, but I sure don't sell out my friends for money. You see, do you know what I mean? It goes both ways. Like, if you're nothing to write home about in the spouse's eyes, then neither are they, right? You know what I mean? Like, this is the other thing too, is you have to measure people by the same standards or measure yourself by the same standards that you set for people. You know what I'm trying to say? And so perhaps maybe you don't drive the best vehicle, or you don't live in the best area or home, or you aren't in the best shape. But what if you're very loyal? What if you're very forgiving? What if you're very caring? What if you're very compassionate and selfless? These are things that money can't buy, right? These are things that most people don't have these days. And so God had this spouse go pair up with a sexy counterfeit, and then this counterfeit may have checked boxes that the spouse felt you didn't check, but this counterfeit may have been a liar. This counterfeit may have been a thief. This counterfeit may have been, fake and selfish and greedy and all these terrible things that nobody wants in a person, especially someone that they have to be married to or co-parent with or live with, right? And this showed the spouse that there's more to people than just the surface level, like how cute their hair is and how great they look in a skirt. You know what I'm trying to say? Like, there's more to it than that, especially when people age and get older. And so this is something that the Lord either has taught this spouse, is teaching this spouse, or will be teaching them in the future. Okay. And so, yeah, so the spouse has always loved you, chosen one, but they tried to tell themselves it was puppy love. It was just lust love, like fake love. Superficial, but they actually had that with this counterfeit. They just seen it skewed and distorted. They saw what they had with you as wrong, and they saw what they had with this counterfeit was right, but it was really the other way around. And so just like the Shallow Hal movie, they needed to have their perception and their perspectives realigned, okay? Because what they had before was all messed up. And the Lord is saying beer goggles, hallelujah. They were seeing people through beer goggles. You know, that old saying, you know, you see everything normal, you're sober, and then you have a couple drinks and all of a sudden you're seeing things skewed. And so that could be it too, is like maybe this spouse either did or does drink beer, okay? And that was clouding their perception as well, was like some sort of like a habit, like, you know, some sort of maybe a drug or drink or something. And it was causing their vision and their understanding to be warped because of beer goggles, right? Some sort of substance that was interfering as well, okay? So there's that as well. But yeah, anyways, that's pretty much the gist of this message, Chosen One. Again, those who have ears to hear will hear, and you'll understand this message is for you because it's very specific. For some of you, this message may be for you. It just may not be playing out in your timeline right now and may come about later, right? And so for some of you, this has already played out. This is confirmation. For others of you, this hasn't played out yet, and this is a revelation for you, okay? But I hope this brought you some clarity and some understanding as to why the Lord... there's so much in this message, right? Why the Lord allowed a counterfeit or counterfeits in the form of partners, exes, friends, and family to interfere in this situation, okay? Maybe on both of y'all's sides. And that whether you realize it or not, it taught lessons. For some of you, the spouse hasn't learned this lesson yet, but they will. For others of you, they've already learned this. And this is like the aftermath, okay? For others of you, the spouse is learning this as I speak, right? But no matter what this spouse has done, you still love this spouse. And it's because you have a 1 Corinthians type of love with this spouse. And no matter what you've done, this spouse still loves you. And so at the end of the day, what you and this spouse share is true love, okay? And what you could share with someone else could be considered possibly more puppy love. And what this spouse could share with someone else, including this counterfeit and or counterfeits, could also be considered puppy love as well, okay? And they've always known that they truly love you. But again, there was this confliction between what they, the preconceived notion of love they had from the past when the world was more normal versus the skewed and distorted perception of love today, okay? Because you would know, Chosen One, if you've lived a few decades like I have, that the perception of love in the last 10 years is way off base compared to what the perception of love was back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, right? It's something's gotten scrambled along the way. And for a lot of us older ones, we know what true love is because we've either experienced it ourselves or given it to someone else, right? Or been around someone who does have it. And so there was a lot of emphasis put on true love in the, I can't speak about the 50s, 60s, 70s. I wasn't alive then, but I know it was in the 80s and 90s and 2000s. And then ever since Y2K, we've went digital, right? Over the last 10, 20 years, dating sites and things like that, and Tinder and rating people based off of their looks, and social media has taken off. And then now that's like the new way of meeting someone and stuff like that. And then people are blown away that, oh, gee, you know, we couldn't get it off the ground, or we couldn't get our way to the altar, or we did get married, but we couldn't stay together. We got divorced, or we got pregnant and had a kid, but we broke up. Like, you know, people are shocked and surprised. And it's like, well, how's that shocking? Everybody is meeting people based off of a photo, right? And even when people are in public, in vicinity of each other, if y'all find each other attractive, you still might not connect and get together, because even though you all find each other appealing, you don't actually have a connection, right? And there may have been people in your past, Chosen One, that you have been with, that you really cared about, that maybe weren't considered as appealing by worldly standards, but it's because but you found them to be because you all shared a connection that was mutual, right? Them to you and you to them. And so this year thing too is that sometimes relationships fall apart because not because both parties are toxic, but because one of the people are, right? So it might not be that you're both unkind, but maybe they are and you're not, or that you're both impatient, but maybe they are and you're not. And then it will eventually disintegrate, because when there's no patience in the mix, there's a problem. When there's boastfulness or envy or unkindness in the mix, there's a problem. And that's what First Corinthians was trying to get at, right? Is that these are the statutes to measure love by. Do you feel this way about somebody? And or just as important, do they feel this way about you? And is y'all's connection for the most part based off of these fundamentals? Okay? And this is why it's important to bring God back into mainstream and forefront, is because we're going to continue to go pursue people based off of superficial things, and therefore be obviously very disappointed and continue to have more single families and divorces and things like this, and abusive households, etc., because people are not actually getting together based off of the right things. They're literally attracted to each other or trying to start something based off of superficial guidelines, right? And society is the one that's either pushing that on people or has implemented that or interfered with that or something along those lines, right? And this is mostly important for our youth because, fortunately I have one foot in the past and one foot in the present. And so I kind of can, see both sides of the fence, right? The past versus today. But the youth today that have been born in the last 10, 20 years that are going to be born in the next 10 years, they're headed towards, either poor relationships or singleness and things like this, because this is how people are meeting and getting to know each other in this new generation, right? And it's just not smart. And so, like I said, if you were attracted to someone at the mall or the party or the store and you all didn't get together, it's not because you thought each other were ugly, it's because you just don't have a connection. But meanwhile, people are on these dating sites trying to make a connection work off of just that, a simple image. And then when they meet in person, they realize they don't actually have a connection. Or they force the connection because they got to talking to each other for weeks beforehand. I'm just going to say this spouse could have even done this, met this counterfeit and or counterfeits through that, through like dating sites or Tinder or something social media, dating app related. And they were being judged off of their superficial attractiveness, and they were judging others based off of their superficial attractionness. And then they got to know each other through communication, maybe phone calls, texts, whatever. And then when they met, maybe there was a connection, but it was kind of forced. And it's because it wasn't natural. It's not like they crossed each other's paths by nature. They crossed each other's paths by trying to go out and actually find that, if that makes sense. You know what I'm saying? So it wasn't an organic, like an organic thing to begin with, okay? Whereas perhaps with you and your spouse, you all met accidentally, like organically. It wasn't in that type of a way, right? So therefore you all crossing each other's paths was actually destined, not forced, if that makes sense, okay? But yeah, so this message is great because it's explaining about the worldly view of love, like I was saying earlier, what this spouse how the spouse could have perceived you in the past or in the present moment or in the future chosen one, whether you realize this or not, how you could have perceived others in your life and how the spouse has perceived their counterfeits in their life as well, and kind of what was going on behind the scenes, right? And why the Lord allowed this to happen in the first place. All right. So, but yes, I'm just going to finish up by saying, there's a way about you, the things that the flaws that this spouse has, this spouse shows these flaws eventually to these counterfeits, and it causes turmoil and upheaval between them and these counterfeits, right? And that's supposed to, because these counterfeits aren't attracted to the spouse in the proper ways. They're attracted to them in a shallow way, and vice versa. The spouse is attracted to these counterfeits in a shallow way. So therefore, they will not accept the flaws about each other, okay? Everyone has a threshold and a breaking point, right? The only way you can surpass that is if you all are meant to be, right? That's the only way it can be surpassed. And so with you, chosen one, there are things like, what am I trying to say, Lord? This spouse has dished up 10 things to this counterfeit and it's caused a big uproar. Meanwhile, this spouse has dished up 100 things to you and you've taken it for the most part in stride, right? And so going back to the 80-year-olds that have been married 60 years, I'm sure there's things that that woman's husband did throughout those 60 years that really, were the most and really got on her nerves, but she still continued to stay the course anyway. Even if there were separations in the midst or bad patches and turmoil, they still stayed the course, right? Because what they had staying power. Not just him, not just her, but what they had together, okay? If that man married someone else, they may not have stayed together 60 years. And if she married someone else, they may not have stayed together 60 years. It was them together that made that happen, right? Their dynamic that was destined for each other and each other only. Same thing is that there could have been things that happened in regards to you, and I'm not saying they're true, because you could have had, unbeknownst, some of you knew this, some of you didn't know this, but unbeknownst to you, chosen one, behind the scenes, you could have had people going to this spouse and trying to purposely decimate and destroy your character to this spouse. Even though 75% of it or more was lies, right? And falsities, it was the things that they were doing would have been enough to cause a worldly person, right? Someone who had puppy love for you to tuck tail and run. And maybe this spouse did tuck tail and run, but it wasn't puppy love though. And so y'all's connection got tested for each other and together, and these counterfeits did it. This counterfeit could have thought that what you and this spouse had was puppy love. They could have thought that it wasn't that deep. And so they could have thought that, especially if this spouse was in denial and or saying things to this counterfeit that made them believe such things, okay? So this counterfeit may have been under the impression that something was less with you and this spouse than it really was, or that they could destroy what it is that you and this spouse had for good, like permanently, easily, right? But they come to discover that, no, it's actually a stronger, deeper root than they had believed that it was, right? And that's because it was something that is and was actually destined, right? And all this counterfeit did was serve a purpose as a temporary tool to teach this spouse this lesson in regards to you that in the long run is going to benefit them and you and y'all's relationship together. This counterfeit didn't know that, right? So anyways, yes, I'm going to leave this message here, okay? I'll be back if the Lord leads me to with anything else, but I hope this message brings, whoever is led to it, brings you some clarity and or some, some encouragement, some revelation, confirmation, whatever it is that you needed to get out of this and the Lord led you to it for it. I hope it finds its way to you, okay? And as always, those who have ears to hear will hear. You will understand this message, right? Because again, this is a message that only the chosen ones will understand, and those that this situation is for will understand, okay? So on that note, I hope this finds you well. Take care, and God bless.